Hello beautiful people and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hello, my name is Dominique, and as you could tell by the title of this video, this is going to be my birth story for my my third baby, but my first girl is what I was trying to say. And I was gonna get dolled up and like look all cute for this YouTube video, but you know, this is real life postpartum, okay? 3 weeks postpartum. And this is just basically my everyday look. So accept me how I am. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. I'm sure baby girl is gonna be joining us at any moment because she's been sleeping for a little bit. So I'm sure she'll be waking up shortly. So my daughter was born on March 16th, 2023 at 11:18 a.m. She was 8 pounds, 3 ounces. My due date was actually March 11th, so I went 5 days past my due date. I probably would have went a little bit longer if I wasn't induced, but I did end up having to be induced. So I went in for my 40-week appointment, and they had me do a non-stress test because they basically wanted to make sure that she wasn't in any kind of distress. My placenta was still working. And they also wanted me to have an ultrasound to check my fluid level because I told them I was having some on and off again leaking. So they did all that. Her heartbeat was great. And I didn't have any contractions while I was hooked up to the monitor. And then when they did the ultrasound, my fluid level was on the lower end. They said it should be between 2.5 and 8 milliliters, and I was at a 4. They said if I had been any lower, they most likely would have just induced me that day, just to make sure she didn't end up going into any kind of distress. So we decided to end up doing an induction just because I was paranoid of something going wrong, and her being like me losing more fluid and her not having enough in there, and I don't know. You have a lot of worries when you're a mom. And I was pretty bummed about it though, because in a way I felt like my body failed me, I guess, because I feel like I would have felt more okay with waiting it out if like my fluid level was on the higher end. Like if I was at like a 6, 7, or 8, I feel like I would have felt better with just waiting it out, and seeing how it went. But since it was on the lower end, I thought that that would be the best decision, to prevent anything from happening, I guess. I didn't even think I was gonna make it to 40 weeks. So the thought of having to be induced wasn't really like an option for me. My first came a month early and my second came at 38 weeks exactly. So I didn't expect to even make it to 40 weeks, let alone go past that and then end up having to be induced. So I was pretty bummed about it. And then, you know, it didn't help that there was like certain people saying how painful it was going to be and how I wasn't going to be able to handle it and how being induced was the worst, blah, blah, blah. So I had a lot of negativity regarding it. So the day before my induction, I was just in a terrible mood. And I was trying everything to put myself into labor. The only thing I didn't try was castor oil, because I also read that if you take castor oil, there is a possibility that the baby poops in the amniotic sac, and I didn't want that to happen. So I didn't try castor oil, but I did try everything else, every other wives' tale that says we'll put you into labor. I tried and nothing was working. So I was just super frustrated and super bummed, because it wasn't the ideal situation. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, I have a healthy baby, and that's all that matters. So on March 16th, we went in at 6 a.m. I felt a little better that morning. I was still pretty bummed about the whole situation. I was really hoping I went into labor during the night, but I didn't. So I woke up pretty bummed still. We get to the hospital, we're in triage, and they checked me and I was 5 centimeters dilated, which was shocking to me because I knew I was having like on and off contractions but I didn't think that they were anything consistent enough to put me at 5 centimeters. So that was when my perspective really changed, I guess, because I was like, cool, I'm already halfway and I haven't even been induced yet. So that was encouraging to see, because I've heard birth stories where women go in, they're not dilated at all, and hours after being on Pitocin, they're only at like a few centimeters. So the fact that I was already at a 5 before even having any Pitocin made me feel a lot better. And I think that's kind of when my perspective shifted about the whole birth situation. And at that point, it's kind of like, okay, Dominique, this is what it is. We just kind of have to go with it now. So they didn't actually start me on the Pitocin until 8:45 because they wanted to see if I would go into labor by myself, because they did say I was having contractions, small ones, like nothing substantial. But I was having small contractions, so they wanted to see if I would go into labor by myself since I was so dilated already, and I didn't. So they ended up starting me on the Pitocin at 8:45. They started me at a 2. And for those of you that don't know, the scale of Pitocin, the minimum is 2 and the highest is a 20. So they started me at a 2, and then 15-20 minutes later, nothing was really going on, so they bumped me up to a 4. And I was walking a little bit, and when they came in to bump me up to a 4, I also asked them to connect me to the wireless monitors, because I didn't want to just lie in the bed during contractions and stuff. I wanted to be able to squat or walk, or, you know, just do what I wanted to do basically in the room. So they did end up hooking me up to the wireless monitors when they bumped me up to a 4. And after I got bumped up to a 4, that's when things kind of started kicking in. So I would say it was about a half hour after the Pitocin started that I actually went into labor. And so the contractions started off strong. And usually when you go into labor, your body starts, like, your contractions are super far apart and they're super short. They're usually like 20 to 30 seconds. And then the closer you get to active labor, which is a 6 centimeter, like 6 centimeter and on, the closer your contractions get and the longer they get. So my contractions starting off were a solid 50 minutes, that would be terrible, 50 seconds to a minute long, like right off the bat. And they were about 5 minutes apart. So half hour after the Pitocin kicked in, my body was just like, all right, time to go. So then they came back in. I told them that I felt them 5 minutes apart. And they bumped me up to a 6. And then they were 5 minutes apart for a while. And then the last time they came in to bump me up, they bumped me up to an 8. And then after that, that's when everything happened. So I only got to an 8 on the Pitocin level, which was fine with me. So it was about 2-ish hours, because I'm counting it from when my contractions actually started, which was like a half hour after they started me on it. So it was about 2 hours of labor. So what was frustrating was like the last half hour of labor, when I was in transition, I couldn't cope with my contractions the way that I wanted to. And I was so proud of myself with how I was handling the contractions throughout this time, because I knew they were going to be stronger because of the Pitocin. So I had a headphone in with my music playing, and I was able to talk and walk through them for a while until they bumped me up to an 8. And then once they bumped me up to an 8, I wasn't able to talk during them, but I was able to talk around them. And then when I was at an 8, I would say this is probably about 10 minutes before she was born, honestly. She came in right after 11. And I was getting so frustrated because I was trying to mentally stay in the game and stay focused, because labor, it's a physical thing, but it's more of a mental game than anything. And I was trying to stay there physically or mentally, but I kept having to be bothered. And I'm not like talking crap about the nurse. I know she was just doing her job, but she was training. So she kept putting, like, adjusting my monitor, and like the second she would adjust it, it would like fall. So like they're like, it's not showing you're having contractions. And I'm like, trust me, I am having contractions, whether that machine is telling you I'm having contractions or not. So I was getting super frustrated because instead of doing what I had to do to cope with the contractions, I had to stand still, which was the worst. And then she came in again, and at this point I was super frustrated because I'm the type of person where when I'm in pain, I would rather just be left alone. Like, if I need you, then cool, but like, unless I tell you I need you, leave me alone. Like, that's just how I am. Like, even my husband was like in the corner and he's like, when you need me, I got you, because that's just how I am. I'd rather be left alone, because people like constantly telling me to breathe or like checking me or talking to me, it just annoys me, and you don't want to be annoyed. You know what I mean? So anyway, she was moving the monitor again. And then at that point I was like, can I just lie down? Because I knew it was about to be go time, because I felt it. I was like, ooh, that pressure. So I lied down on my side, and I was holding on to the side of the bed with one hand, and then my husband's hand in the other, because I was like, oh yeah, it's getting real. It's about to go down. And she's like, do you feel pressure like you have to poop, or do you feel pressure in the front? And I was like, I feel pressure everywhere. Like, I can tell she's crowning. And so she calls everyone else in, and I'm in the middle of a contraction, and they're trying to tell me to turn onto my back so they can check to see how dilated I am. And I'm like, you can wait till this contraction passes, because at that point they were happening every 2 minutes. I couldn't, and it felt like I couldn't catch a break. So I knew it was gonna be go time. And then sure enough, when the contraction passed, I hurried up and flipped over to my back before I had another one, because I figured I would be pushing after that. And sure enough, she checked me and I was complete, and the baby was right there. So she's like, all right, do you want us to tell you when to push, or do you just want to follow your body? And I was like, I'll just push. So I just kind of followed my contractions. I only pushed for 2-3 minutes, and she was out. But that ring of fire was a ring of firing, okay? It was a little spicy. And for, if there's any first time moms watching this, the ring of fire is basically when your baby is completely crowning, like literally their head is right there, and your hoo-ha is being stretched to the absolute max because their head's coming through. That's the ring of fire. And so I thought like she was gonna come out with like a huge head or something, because I was just like, why did it hurt so bad this time? I didn't understand. I didn't tear or anything, because I thought like, oh, she must have had a bigger head than her brothers, or I must have tore or something like that, because it was more painful to get her out than it was the first 2 times. But her head was the same size as her brother's head. And she was 2 pounds heavier, so I don't know if that had something to do with it. My boys were born at 6'7" and 6'8", and she was 8'3". So I don't know if that had something to do with it, but her head size was the same as her brother. So I don't know what was going on there. And even my husband was like, that's the loudest you've screamed. I'm like, yeah, because I don't know what was happening, but that was a little... Whew. And I think it's because I did lose so much of my concentration that at that point it was just like all the pain hit me at once. I don't know if that had something to do with it. It most likely did. But yeah, so luckily I did not have to push for long. I think it was like 3 or 4 pushes. And then she was here. She came earthside, and she came out hollering. She was not happy that we forced her to come out, because she came out and I was like, ooh, them lungs, girl, they're fully developed there. It's so weird how you remember like labor in like pieces, I guess, because I don't remember grabbing her and bringing her up, but apparently I did, because somehow she went from in me to on my chest, and the part from when she actually came out and on my chest, those like 5 seconds, I don't even remember grabbing her to put her up here. But I was holding her. But it's crazy how it comes in bits and pieces. But yeah. And after being in the room for a few hours, they did end up moving us to the postpartum unit, and I only had to stay a night, which was nice because initially when you have a vaginal birth, they make you stay 2 nights, 3 nights for a C-section, and I was lucky and only had to stay 1 night, thank the Lord, because that room was 80 degrees, okay? And my husband kept trying to control the thermostat and it wasn't going anywhere. And I was like, dang, I know this is the newborn unit, but holy crap, it is hot. And postpartum sweats are a thing. They are very real. And so I barely slept. I think maybe I slept an hour that night. We were in the hospital between feeding the baby, them coming in to check me sweating, me having to pee, and it was not a fun night. So I was so glad when they were like, did you want to go home today? And I was like, absolutely, yes, get me out of here, please. So we went home Friday night and she was able to meet her brothers, which was very sweet, and they've been obsessed with her ever since, especially my youngest. He calls her his baby. It's very, very cute. But yeah, that's my birth story. It was pretty quick, so I can't really complain. It wasn't exactly what I had in mind, but I also can't complain because it was very short, so I'm blessed for that. Postpartum though, this has been the hardest recovery for me postpartum. And I think a lot of that has to do with the Pitocin because I don't take medicine for anything. I don't really, like, if I'm sick, I'd rather just be sick. Or if I'm in pain, I would rather just be in pain. I'm just hard-headed and stubborn. So I think for my body to go from not really ever having anything in it to that much Pitocin, because they had me hooked up to the Pitocin for 2 hours after I gave birth as well. So I think it like overloaded my body in a way, and that first week especially, I was out for the count. Like, I was struggling. It was bad. I got really bad rashes on my legs. I got a rash on my stomach. It finally like scabbed over and is healing now. My legs have finally cleared up, but it was rough. Like, I was telling my mom, like, I don't know why this time around it's so hard, because you would think that, oh, it's my third child, it's my third time being in postpartum, it should, in my head, be easier than it was the first 2 times. But this time I couldn't even like sit up or like get up or anything without it being absolutely terrible. The afterbirth pains were rough. I got the afterbirth tincture. My best friend bought it for me. And I was really excited to try it because, you know, the afterbirth pains, when your uterus is contracting down, it gets worse with every child you have because your uterus has to work harder to shrink back down. And so I was really excited to have this because I've heard good things about it. And it didn't really work because it was still really, really painful for me. And also it happened more often than it did with my first or my second. So I felt like those times, like, I really only felt it when my letdown was happening, essentially, because, you know, when you have colostrum, you don't really have a full letdown. But when the baby first latched on, like, that's when I would feel it, and then it would last, like, you know, anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute, and then it would be done. But this time around with her, it started when she would latch on, and then it would go for like a full-on minute, and then it would happen like 2 or 3 more times while she was nursing. So it wasn't like a one-time thing that I can suck it up and then be done. Like, it was constant, like, throughout the nursing session, which was so painful. And I was just like, ugh. And I told my mom and my husband, I was like, it's one thing when you have contractions, like when you're in labor, because you know the reward is being able to see your baby, but like the afterbirth contractions, like, there's no benefit to this. I'm just in pain and miserable right now. But now we're 3 weeks and 2 days postpartum, to be exact, and I'm feeling So much better now. I mean, obviously I'm not 100%, but I'm at the point where I've been doing like deep core exercises, like nothing crazy. And I use the term exercise lightly, but it's more like a lot of breath work and stuff to really engage your core, your deep muscles. And I feel like that's been helping a lot. My core strength, I'm not saying it's back, but it doesn't feel like complete jello, if that makes sense. So I am feeling better a little bit in that area as well. And yeah, breastfeeding this time around is a lot easier, and I heard that it gets easier with every kid, and that is 100% true in my case. I really struggled with my first one with breastfeeding, but this time around I'm doing pretty well with it, so I can't complain in that area. My letdown is a lot stronger this time, to the point where it's almost painful. But like I said, I'm just blessed to be able to breastfeed my baby, so I'm just going to just take that for what it is. I think I hear the baby waking up, which is perfect timing, so I'm gonna go get her, and then I'll be right back. This is baby girl. She doesn't want to show her face right now, which is fine. But yeah, this is my baby girl, my very healthy baby girl. Oh. Alright guys, that's gonna wrap up this video. I need to feed little Miss Ma'am before she gets too crazy over here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.